In this class, we're going to discuss quadratic equation. Let's start by explaining what is meant by quadratic equation. A quadratic equation is an equation whose highest power of the unknown is 2. Okay, let me give you a typical representation of a quadratic equation. Example is ax squared plus bx plus c. Now, having known the meaning of a quadratic equation, let me explain the terms in quadratic equation. This is how a typical quadratic equation looks like. Are you paying attention? Now, in this equation, we call this equation quadratic equation because the highest power of the unknown is 2. You understand? The highest power of the unknown is 2. The unknown in this equation is x. You understand? X is the unknown in this equation. Are you paying attention? Now, if I have another equation, maybe ay squared plus by plus c, you understand? This is also quadratic equation because the highest power of the unknown is 2, you understand? So the unknown in this equation is what? Y. Do you understand? Okay? To know the unknown in a quadratic equation, are you paying attention? You have to study the letters that carries the power, the highest power, you understand, which is 2. Are you paying attention? So that is how I knew that y is the unknown. Are you paying attention? Okay, now let us look at another example. Let's say we have ax squared plus c equals to 0. Let me just put it equals to 0. This equals to 0. This is how all quadratic equation will look like. Are you paying attention? Now, this also is a quadratic equation, and the reason is because the highest power of the unknown is what? 2. You understand? You can see that this is the power. Are you paying attention? This is the power. This is also the power. You understand? So this is also a quadratic equation. Are you paying attention? Now, please, having known what is meant by a quadratic equation, let us start by identifying the term. This equation that you have here is known as trinomial. Are you paying attention? Trinomial quadratic equation because we have 3 terms. Are you paying attention? Now, in this equation, ax squared plus bx plus c, we have the first term, we have the second term, and we have the constant term. Are you paying attention? The first term is the coefficient of x squared. Are you paying attention? The first term in this quadratic equation is the coefficient of x squared. Now, what is the coefficient of x squared? The coefficient of x squared is what? A. So this is the first term. You understand? Okay? Now, the second term is the coefficient of x. And the coefficient of x in this equation is b. You understand? So this is the second term. Okay? Now, the constant term is the term that doesn't have the variable, the unknown that you are looking for. Are you paying attention? The constant term is the term that doesn't have any letters that is constant. It doesn't have any letters attached to it. You understand? It doesn't have any unknown. The unknown that you are told to determine. This constant term doesn't have it. The constant term is what? C. You understand? This is the constant term. Do you understand? Okay? Now, having known the term in the quadratic equation, let's start with this example. We are asked to determine the first term, the second term, and the constant term in this quadratic equation. Okay, let's start with the first question. We have 3x squared plus 2x plus 5 equals to 0. Now, don't forget, I told you the coefficient of x squared, the coefficient of the unknown that has the highest power is the first term. Are you paying attention? It might not be x squared again. You understand? It might not be x squared. They might not put it as x squared. For example, let me add another question now. Let me add 5y squared plus 3x plus 4 equals to 0. Okay? And let me add another question. I'm just adding a question now, okay? Just to let you understand this concept very well, okay? So, let's have 5 minus 2x plus 6x squared equals to 0, okay? So let's go back to this question. Now, the coefficient that has the highest power of the unknown, that coefficient is the first term. Are you paying attention? The highest power of the unknown in this equation is what? 2. And the unknown that we are looking for is what? X. The coefficient of the highest power of the unknown is the first term. Just have that at the back of your mind. Do you understand? Now, the unknown in this equation is x. You can see, we don't know the value of x. Are you paying attention? Now, but I've told you that the first term in a quadratic equation is the coefficient that belongs to the highest power of the unknown. Are you paying attention? The highest power of the unknown is what? 2. The unknown is x. So the coefficient of x squared is what? 3. Therefore, 3 is the first term in this quadratic equation. Do you understand? The first term equals to 3. Okay? Now, the second term is the coefficient of x. Are you paying attention? The coefficient of x is the second term. Are you paying attention? So, in this case, b, okay, let me put it. A equals to first term equals to 3. B equals to second term, and that is what? 2. Do you understand? Now, the constant term is the term that is not attached to any letters. Are you paying attention? The numbers that is not attached to any letters in our quadratic equation is what we call the constant term. So, we can call that one C. C equals to the constant term or third term. Or let's call it constant term, okay? Constant term equals to what? 5. Do you see now? So the first term in this quadratic equation is 3a, b is what? 2, and c is what? 3. Do you understand? Okay, let's do another question. For this quadratic equation, 5x squared minus 4x plus 1 equals to 0. Okay? Now, looking at this quadratic equation, what is the first term? The first term is the coefficient of the coefficient that belongs to the highest power of the unknown. The highest power of the unknown is 2. The unknown is x. The coefficient of x is the coefficient of x squared is what? 5. So the first term here in this quadratic equation equals to 5, and the second term, which is b, equals to what? The second term, which is b, equals to negative 4, and the constant term. The constant term is also known as the third term. You understand? So the constant term equals to what? Plus 1. That is 1. Do you understand? Now, I want to do something. Pay attention to this sign, okay? 5 is also known as positive 5. You understand? And 1 is also known as what? Positive 1. But when it comes to negatives, you must indicate that there is a negative sign. That's why I have negative 4, negative 4. Okay? So, now, we are done with 2 questions. Let us deal with the third question. We have x squared plus 3x minus 28. X squared plus 3x minus 28. Now, the first term in this quadratic equation is the coefficient of x squared, because x is the unknown in this quadratic equation, and the coefficient that belongs to the highest power of the unknown is the first term. So a equals to what? A equals to 1. You understand? First term. Let me just put it. First term. That's 1. Now, you might not see 1 in this at the coefficient of this x squared, but there is an invisible 1. You understand? 1x squared is also the same thing as what? X squared. You understand? 1a is also the same thing as what? A. So 1x squared is also the same thing as what? X squared. You might not see 1 as the coefficient of x squared. You understand? So the first term here is 1, and the second term, which is b, equals to what? The coefficient of x. That is the second term. That is what? Plus 3. Plus 3. You can put 3. You understand? And the constant term, which is c, the constant term equals to what? Negative 28. Okay? Now, I want you to attempt question 4. You understand? And as well, I want to attempt question 5. Now, I'm going to do question 6. Okay? Now, question 6. We have 5 minus 2x plus 6x squared. 5 minus 2x plus 6x squared equals to 0. All quadratic equations might not be arranged like this. You understand? They might not be arranged like this, but just note the highest power of the unknown. Immediately you note that. That will tell you maybe it is quadratic equation or any other form of equation. Are you paying attention? Now, because the highest power of this unknown is x squared, the highest power of this unknown, in this quadratic equation is 2. That means that this is a quadratic equation. A quadratic equation is an equation whose highest power of the unknown is 2. Are you paying attention? Do you understand? Okay. Now, here, let us determine the first term. The first term is the coefficient of x. The coefficient of x squared. You understand? So, the first term, a equals to what? Plus 6. And it's also the same thing as 6. You can leave it like that. B equals to what? Negative 2. And C equals to what? 5. Having learned how to identify the terms in a quadratic equation. Now, how do we solve this quadratic equation? There are 4 methods that we're going to talk about. The first method is the factorization method. The second is the completing the square. The third is the formula method. And the fourth is the graphical method. You understand? So let us discuss the first 3 methods. Okay? The first method is the factorization method. Okay? Now pay attention, please. We are asked to solve this quadratic equation using the factorization method. Now let's start with question 1. That is x squared negative 2x negative 15 equals to 0. Now, you know that we've learned how to identify the first, second, and the constant term in our quadratic equation. To solve this question, all you have to do is that you just have to find 2 numbers such that their product is equals to the constant term in this quadratic equation and their sum is equals to the second term in this quadratic equation. Listen to the explanation again, okay? Let's say we have a quadratic equation ax squared plus bx plus c equals to 0. The constant term is what? C. The second term is b. You understand? This is the second term and this is the first term. You understand? First, second, and the constant term. Do you understand? Now, what I'm trying to say is that in an attempt to solve this quadratic equation, all you have to do is to find 2 numbers in which their product is equals to the constant term in this quadratic equation and their sum is equals to the second term. Now, the aim of going through the how to identify the terms in quadratic equation, this is the aim. You understand? The aim is that by the time we get to factorization method, you'll be able to identify the constant term, the second term, and the first term. Now, I'm asking you now, what is the constant term in this quadratic equation? The constant term in this quadratic equation is what? Negative 15. You understand? This is the constant term. Are you paying attention? And the second term in this quadratic equation is what? Negative 2. This is the second term. Now, the first term is what? 1. This is the first term. The coefficient of x squared is the first term, the coefficient of x is the second term, and the constant term is that term that doesn't have any value of x attached. You understand? Now, all you have to do in an attempt to solve this quadratic equation using the factorization method is that find 2 numbers in which their product is equals to the constant term. The constant term is negative 15 rather. So when you have to determine 2 numbers, find 2 numbers in which their product is equals to negative 15 and their sum is equals to the second term, which is negative 2. Do you understand now? That is it. Now, let's go. What are the 2 numbers in which by the time we take their product, we are going to have negative 15? And by the time we add these 2 numbers together, we are going to have negative 2. What are the 2 numbers? I don't know and you don't know. Let's check. Can we add, let's try 2 and 3. 2 times 3 equals to 6. 2 plus 3 equals to 5. So this is not correct. Let us try another number. Let us try 3 and 4. 3 times 4 equals to what? 12. And 3 plus 4 equals to 7. So this is also not correct. Let us have another number. 3 and 5. 3 times 5 equals to 15. 3 plus 5 equals to 8. Even though 3 times 5 gave us 15, but we are looking for negative 15, not 15. Do you understand? And 3 plus 5 gave us 8. It is not negative 2. You see, the product of these 2 numbers that we need, their product must be equal to negative 15. And their sum must be equal to what? Negative 2. You understand? Now, by the time I use 3 and 5, 3 times 5 gave me 15. 3 plus 5 gave me 8. So this is also not what? Correct. So let's change the sign now. Okay? Let's change the sign. Let's use negative 5 and 3. You understand? So negative 5 times 3 is what? Negative 15. Are you paying attention? Now, negative 5 plus 3, what is that? Negative 2. So therefore, the two number that satisfy this quadratic equation is what? Negative 5 and what? Negative 5 and 3. Do you understand? Let me write it somewhere. Negative 5 and 3. So the two number in which their product is equals to the constant term and their sum is equals to the second term is what? Negative 5 and 3. Okay, so I'm going to erase this. The reason why I show you this is because I want you to understand. Okay, if I'm doing this in exam, I don't have to show this step. You understand? So we have negative 5 and 3. Now we are going to replace. I'm telling you the next step now. The first step is to look for two number in which their product is equals to the constant term and their sum is equals to the second term. Okay, please just pay attention. Okay, now the next step is to replace the second term by these two number. You understand? Okay, let's go. This is what? Negative 5x positive 3x. You understand? Because the unknown is x now. You understand? That's why we have to put x. Negative 5x times what? 3x. That will give me negative 15x squared. And I'm still coming back to that place. Just pay attention, okay? Now, for this, I'm going to have x squared. Okay? X squared negative 5x negative, okay, positive 3x minus 15 equals to 0. What I did is that I replaced negative 2x as what? Negative 5x positive 3x. By the time I add this together, I'm still going to have this. Do you understand? Okay. Now we are going to separate this quadratic equation. Okay. We are going to separate it into two. This and this. Okay. We have. Please just pay attention. Okay. Please just pay attention. Now I've separated this quadratic equation. Now let us factorize the first part. We have two parts now. This is the first part and this is the second part. You understand? Let us factorize the first part. Factorizing means bringing out the common terms between these two between the two terms in the brackets. You understand? What is common to x squared and x and negative 5x? The common terms is what? X. So I'm going to have x into bracket x minus 5. Do you understand? Listen to the explanation again. What I'm doing here is that I want to factorize the first part of this quadratic equation. The first part is x squared minus 5x. Now, if I'm to factorize this, I have to look at the terms that is common to x squared and negative 5x. That term is what? X. So, by the time I open this bracket by x, I'm still going to arrive at this. You understand? So, that is why I will call this method factorization method. Okay? Now, here I'm going to have what is common to positive 3x and negative 15. What is common is positive 3. You understand? So I'm going to have positive 3 into bracket x minus 5. Listen to the explanation again. It's simple. If I choose x here, x is not present in 15. So I cannot use x. What is common to positive 3x and negative 15 is what? Positive 3. By the time I take the product of positive 3 and x, I'm still going to arrive at positive 3x. Positive 3 and negative 5. Negative 15. Do you understand? Okay? Now, this will be equals to 0. All we have to do here is that because we have the same factor inside this bracket, I have to choose one. So I'm going to have x plus 3. This x plus this 3x. Oh, sorry. This x plus this 3. That's why I have this equals to 0. And I'm going to choose one among these brackets. I'm going to choose one. So I'm going to have or x minus 5 equals to 0. Do you understand? Here, I'm going to have x equals to negative 3 or x equals to 5. I just move this 5 to the other side of the equation. The negative sign changed to positive. I move this 3 to the other side of the equation. The positive sign changes to negative. Do you understand? Now, do you know that this kind of quadratic equation is straightforward? Yeah. I'm going to explain. It's straightforward, and the reason is because the coefficient of x squared is unity. The coefficient of x squared is unity in the sense that the coefficient of x is what? 1. But there are some quadratic equations in which the coefficient of x is not unity. We are still coming here. Are you paying attention? So now the value of x in this that will make this quadratic equation equals to 0 is what? Negative 3 and 5. Do you understand? So negative 3 and 5 are the roots of this quadratic equation. because by the time you substitute negative 3 as x equals to negative 3, you are going to have 0. And by the time you substitute x equals to 5, you are still going to have 0. You understand? These are what we call the root of the quadratic equation. Hence, the root of the quadratic equation is that values that we make that quadratic equation equals to 0. Do you understand? Okay? Don't forget that I said this quadratic equation is what? Is unity. You understand? Because the coefficient of x squared is what? 1. There are some quadratic equations in which the coefficient of x squared is not 1. There are some things that you have to do before you factorize. Are you paying attention? We are still coming there, okay? Now, I want you to attempt this second question. I want you to attempt this second question and drop your answers in the comment section, okay? If you attempt it and get it right, you are going to have x equals to negative 3 or negative 2. That will be the value of x if you get it right, okay? But if you didn't get this answer, then you are incorrect. Try it again and listen to the explanation, okay? In this class, we're going to learn how to solve quadratic equation using the factorization method, okay? We are asked to find the root of this quadratic equation. Don't forget, in our previous class, I told you root of quadratic equation refers to those values that satisfy the quadratic equation. The root of quadratic equation refers to those values that make that quadratic equation equals to 0. You understand? Okay? So let's start with the first question. We have x squared plus 3x minus 28 equals to 0. Now, how do we solve this quadratic equation? To solve this quadratic equation, you can see that in this quadratic equation, the value of a is what? 1. Hello? I'm very sure you are part of our previous class. A is the coefficient of the unknown that have the highest power. You understand? The unknown in this equation is x. You understand? Now, the coefficient of x squared will be the a. And in this case, a is what? 1, which is the coefficient of what? X squared. Do you understand? A is the coefficient of the unknown that have the highest power. Are you paying attention? So, now, the value of a is 1. This means that this quadratic equation is unity. The value of a in this quadratic equation is unity. That is, it is 1. Now, how do we proceed to solve this quadratic equation? All we have to do is that we have to find two numbers such that when we multiply it, it will give us c. This is c, okay? This is b, and this is a. A is the coefficient of x squared. Do you understand? But there is one in this. There is one at the front of this x squared. It's just that it is invisible. You understand? So a is the coefficient of x squared, which is the coefficient of the unknown that has the highest power. B is the coefficient of x, and c is the constant term. Are you paying attention? All this we discussed in our previous class. So if you missed the first class, kindly check the description of this video, and you are going to see some link there. Click on those links to watch other classes. You understand? Okay. Now, the first step is that we are going to find two numbers such that when we take the product of these two numbers, we are going to get the value of c, and when we add these two numbers, we are going to get the value of b. You understand? B is 3, c is negative 28. So you have to think of two numbers. Think very fast. What are those two numbers that if I take their product, I'm going to get negative 28, and if I add them together, I'm going to get plus 3. Those numbers are positive 7 and negative 4. You understand? You just have to think. You understand? 7 times negative 4, it will give me negative 28. Let us try. 7 times negative 4, that is what? Negative 28. And 7 plus negative 4, that will be what? 7 minus 4, which is what? 3. You understand? Because positive times negative is what? Negative. Do you understand? So those two numbers are what? Positive 7 and negative 4. Do you understand? If I add these two numbers together, I got 3. If I take their product, I got 28. You can see now. So the first step in solving a quadratic equation in which the a is unity, that is the coefficient of x squared, the coefficient of the highest power of the unknown is unity, that is 1, is that you have to think of two numbers. If you are using factorization method now, you have to think of two numbers such that when you take the product of these two numbers, you are going to have c. C is the constant term in the quadratic equation. Don't worry, you are going to understand, okay? Just pay attention. And when you add these two numbers together, you must get b. B is the coefficient of x. Are you paying attention? So, having known the two numbers, the next step is that I'm going to replace b by those two numbers. The b is what? Plus 3. So, please just pay attention. I'm going to have x squared. Now, the two numbers is what? Plus 7, negative 4. You understand? So, I'm going to have plus 7 Please pay attention. Plus 7, negative 4 into bracket x minus 28 equals to 0. You understand? Please just pay attention, okay? See, if I had 7 minus 4, I'm going to get 3. So, having known the two numbers that if you take their product, you're going to get the constant term, and if you have them together, you're going to get the b, which is the second term. You understand? So, I replace b by those two numbers. You understand? I have those two numbers together. I replace it by b, and I replace the second term by those two numbers. The two numbers is what? Plus 7 and negative 4. So I replace 3 by plus 7 and negative 4. If I have these two numbers together, I'm still going to get the value of plus 3. Do you understand? Okay, so let us proceed. Here I'm going to have x squared, x multiplied by plus 7. I'm going to have plus 7x, x multiplied by negative 4, negative 4x minus 28 equals to 0. Do you understand how I got here? I just opened the bracket using x. You understand? So x multiplied by plus 7, I have plus 7x. X multiplied by negative 4, I have negative 4x. Do you understand? Now, the next step is that I'm going to split this equation into 2. You understand? You just have to pay attention. You're going to understand, okay? I'm going to split this equation into 2. This is the first part, and this is the second part. Do you understand? Now, let us factorize each part. That is why we call this method factorization method. You understand? Now, having splitted this equation into 2 parts, I'm going to factorize each part. What is common to x squared and plus 7x? The value that is common to x squared and plus 7x is what? X. So I'm going to have x into bracket x plus 7. Do you understand? Okay? Now, we have got to the second bracket. What is common to negative 4x and negative 28? The value that is common is what? Negative 4. You understand? The value that is common to negative 4x and negative 28 is what? Negative 4. So here I'm going to have negative 4 into bracket x minus, x plus 7. You understand? You have to know how to factorize. You understand? If you didn't know how to factorize, you might have problem solving quadratic equation using factorization method. When we are talking about factorization, we are referring to the factors of 2 or more terms. You understand? What is that term that is common to what we have? Are you paying attention? So the term that is common to x squared and plus 7x is what? X. So I factored it out. That is why we call it factorization method. Okay? So here, now the goal is to make sure that the content in the first bracket is the same as the content in the second bracket. The first bracket is this and the second bracket is this. You can see that we have x plus 7 and x plus 7. So I'm going to choose one. Here I'm going to have x minus 4. X minus 4. Now, equals to, this is equals to 0. Equals to 0. I'm splitting it now, okay? This x minus 4 equals to 0. Then I'm going to choose one of this bracket. You can choose this or this. You're still going to have the same answer. So I'm going to have x plus 7 is also equals to 0. Since I'm looking for the value of x, I'm going to have x equals to what? 4 or what? X equals to what? Negative 7. You understand? That is the value of x for this quadratic equation. Please, I don't know, maybe you get what I'm saying. The goal is to determine the root of the quadratic equation. The root of this quadratic equation are those values that makes the quadratic equation equals to 0 or satisfy the quadratic equation. Are you paying attention? Now, if by the time you substitute the value of x as 4 into this quadratic equation, you are still going to have 0. You understand? If you substitute the value of x as negative 7 in this quadratic equation, you are still going to have 0. Are you paying attention? So, that is the final answer. Now, let us proceed to question number 2. You have to find the root of k squared plus 7k plus 10. K squared plus 7k plus 10 equals to 0. You understand? Okay? Now, you can see that in this quadratic equation, a is also unity. A is the coefficient of the unknown that has the highest power. Are you paying attention? The unknown that has the highest power is k, and we have k squared. So the coefficient of k squared is what? 1. That means that a is unity. That is, a is 1. Okay? Please just pay attention, okay? Now, how do we solve this quadratic equation? All you have to do is that find two numbers such that when you take the product of these two numbers, you are going to get the constant term. The constant term is c. You understand? The constant term is c. The second term is b. And the first term is a. You understand? Since a, okay, let me represent a small letter b. A, okay? A is 1. You understand? So there is an invisible one as the coefficient of this k squared. Do you understand? Okay. Now, to solve this quadratic equation, you have to find two numbers such that when you take their product, you must have the constant term. The constant term here is what? 10. What are those two numbers? And if you have these two numbers together, you must have 7 as your answer. What are those two numbers? 5 and 2. 5 and 2. 5 multiplied by 2 will give us 10. 5 multiplied by 2 will give us 10. 5 plus 2 will give us what? 7. You understand? Okay, sorry. Sorry. This is 10, okay? Now, you can see that the numbers that we need is what? 5 and 2. So, in that case, I'm going to replace the second term, which is b, by 5 and 2. Are you paying attention? Just pay attention. You're going to understand. Now, let's go. I'm going to have k squared plus, open the bracket, 5 plus 2k plus 10 equals to 0. You know what I did? I replaced 7 as 5 plus 2. You understand? 5 plus 2 will give us what? 7. So, I replace 7 as what? 5 plus 2. Now, here I'm going to have k squared plus 5 multiplied by k is what? 5k plus 5k plus 2 multiplied by k will give me what? Plus 2k plus 10 equals to 0. Do you understand how I got there? Just pay attention, okay? Now, having gotten to this point, we have to what? Factorize. You understand? You have to separate this equation into two. This is the first part and this is the second part. So I'm going to factorize this bracket. I'm going to factorize the two brackets. What is the, let's deal with the first bracket now, okay? What is the factor that is common to k squared and 5k? The factor that is common to k squared and 5k is what? K. You understand? So I'm going to have k into bracket k plus 5, because if I open the bracket now, I'm going to have 5, k times k is what? K squared. K times 5 is what? 5k. Okay, let's proceed to the second bracket, plus 2k and plus 10. What is the factor that is common to plus 2k and plus 10? The factor that is common to plus 2k and plus 10 is what? Plus 2. You understand? So I'm going to have plus 2 into bracket k plus 5. You understand? Because by the time you open this bracket using this plus 2, you are going to have plus 2 times k is what? Plus 2k. Plus 2 times plus 5 is what? Plus 10. You understand? This is equals to 0. Now, please, anytime you are dealing with quadratic equation involving factorization method, see, the values that you have in the first bracket must be the same as the values that you have in the second bracket. Do you understand? Hello? Listen to what I said. When you are dealing with quadratic equation, especially trinomial, you understand? Trinomial quadratic equation, the value that you have here must be the same as the value that you have here. Okay? Just use that as an 8. You understand? Also, if by the time you factorize yours, then you got the value of, you get another value in this bracket, another value in this bracket, know that something is wrong. You understand? So when you are factorizing, just pay attention, okay? Pay attention to each details in the term. Now, here I'm going to have k plus 2 equals to 0. Now I'm going to choose one of these brackets. K plus 5 equals to 0. Here I'm going to have k equals to negative 2 and k equals to what? Negative 5. You understand? So the root of this quadratic equation is what? Negative 2 and what? Negative 5. Those are the values of k that satisfy the quadratic equation. Do you understand? Okay, now let us do the third question. Do you understand? Okay, the third question is d squared plus 10d minus 24 equals to 0. Okay, now how do we solve this quadratic equation? How do we solve this quadratic equation? Don't forget, since a is unity, you understand? Please, I want you to understand this thing. You know, when I mean a is unity, it means that a is 1. That is the coefficient of d squared. You understand? A is 1. So if a is not 1, there are some things, there are some important steps that you have to take before you begin to calculate. Are you paying attention? We are still coming there. Are you paying attention? But we are dealing with quadratic equation where a is unity. Are you paying attention? A, the coefficient of the highest power of the unknown is 1. That is what I mean by a being unity. You understand? So what are the two numbers such that if you take the product of these two numbers, you are going to have negative 24, and if you add these two numbers together, you are going to have positive 10. Those two numbers are, okay, I'm giving you some seconds, okay, to think before I give you the two numbers. the two numbers are 12 and negative 2. You understand? Now let us take the product of 12 and negative 2. 12 times negative 2 equals to what? Negative 24. And 12 plus negative 2, that will be what? 12 minus 2 equals to what? 10. You understand? You can see that the product of the two numbers equals to our constant term. The constant term is what? Negative 24. And the sum of these two numbers is equals to our second term, which is what? 10. Plus 10. Okay? So I'm going to replace the second term, which is plus 10, by these two numbers. Are you paying attention? By the sum of these two numbers. Are you paying attention? So I'm going to have d squared now plus the sum of these two numbers is what? 12 plus minus 2. 12 plus minus 2d minus 24 equals to 0. Please, do you understand what I did? What I did is that I just substitute 10 as what? 10 minus 2. Okay? And I put plus because the content in this bracket has to be in additional sign. So by the time we take the necessary arithmetic, it can result into minus. You understand? So let's proceed. Here I'm going to have d squared plus, now 12 plus minus 2, that will give me what? 12 minus 2. Please pay attention. If you take the product of positive and negative, you're going to have what? Negative. So I'm going to have 12 minus 2d minus 24 equals to 0. Now the next step here is that I'm going to open the bracket using d. So I'm going to have d squared plus 12d minus 2d minus 24 equals to 0. You understand? Okay? Now the next step is that I'm going to, please pay attention, I'm going to separate this equation into two. The first part will be this place, and the second part is this. You understand? Like we did in the previous question. You understand? So here I'm going to factorize. What is common to d squared and 12d? The common factor between among d squared and 12d is what? D into bracket d plus 12. Okay? Now what is common in the second bracket? I'm going to factorize. Factorize what is common. What is common between negative 2d and negative 24? The answer is negative 2. So I'm going to have negative 2 into bracket d. Are you paying attention? Minus 12. Okay? Oh, it is positive 12 now. Because, please pay attention. If you put negative 12, negative 2 times negative 12, that will give us what? Positive 24. Is not true. So negative 2 times positive 12, that will give what? Negative 24. You understand? So please, I beseech you, when you are factorizing, kindly pay attention, you understand, to every terms in the bracket. Okay? So here I'm going to have d minus 2 equals to 0 and d plus 12 equals to 0. You understand? D equals to what? 2, or d equals to what? Negative 12. That is the solution to that question. If you want to check, you can substitute the value of d as 2 or negative 12. The quadratic equation will give you 0. You understand? That is the answer to that quadratic equation. So this is the second class. You can I want to do something. Attempt the question 4 and drop the answer in the comment section. Okay? Attempt the question 4 and drop the answer in the comment section. So that will be all for this class. So in this class, the type of quadratic equation that we solve is those quadratic equations where a is unity. There are some quadratic equations where the value of a is not unity. A is the coefficient of the unknown that has the highest power. You understand? As you can see that the coefficient of x squared here is 1, and for other equation, the coefficient of the unknown that has the highest power, which is 2, is what? 1. You understand? So, but there are some quadratic equations where the coefficient of the unknown is not unity. You have to do some step. So that's what I'm trying to say. So by the time we get to our next class, we are going to deal with that. Okay? In this class, we are going to learn how to solve quadratic equation using the factorization method. And the type of quadratic equation that we're going to be focusing on is the type where a is not unity. You understand? You know, in our previous class, I gave you a typical representation of a quadratic equation. We have ax squared plus bx plus c equals to 0. Now, in this quadratic equation, a is the first term, b is the second term, and c is the constant term. Now, what we discussed in our previous class is the type where a is unity. A is unity simply means that the value of a is 1. You understand? The value of a is 1, but the type of quadratic equation that we're going to be factorizing in this class is the type where a is not 1. You understand? A is not unity. Okay, let's start with the first question. We are asked to solve for the value of x in this quadratic equation. 2x squared plus 5x plus 3 equals to 0. In this quadratic equation, a is not unity because the value of a is 2. You understand? A is the coefficient of x squared and b is the coefficient of x. C is the constant term. In this quadratic equation, the value of a is not unity. You understand? Is not unity. If it is unity, the value of a, that is the coefficient of x squared, it will be 1. So how do we solve this quadratic equation using a factorization method? You just have to pay attention. In this quadratic equation, a equals to 2 and b equals to plus 5 and c equals to plus 3. You understand? You can neglect the plus, okay? 3 is always the same thing as plus 3. You understand? Now, the first step is to take the product of the first term and the constant term. The first term is a and the constant term is c. You understand? Okay? The product of the first term and the constant term is equals to 2 multiplied by 3. That will give us 6. You understand? So, now, having taken the product of the first term and the constant term, you have to think of two numbers. Hello, pay attention. The product is this. This is product. Okay? Okay? Now, you have to think of two numbers such that when you take the product of that two numbers, it will be equal to the product of the first term and the constant term. And when you sum these two numbers, it will be equal to the product. It will be equal to the second term in the quadratic equation. Let me explain what I mean. The first step in solving a quadratic equation where a is not unity is that you have to take the product of the first term and the constant term. The first term is a and the constant term is c. A in this quadratic equation is 2 and c is 3. So the first step is that I take the product, which is 2 and 3. So I got 6. Now, having taken their product, we know that in this quadratic equation, the second term is b. The second term is b and the second term is 5. Now, the next step is that you have to think of two numbers such that the product of these two numbers will give you the product of a and c. What is the product of a and c? The product of a and c is 6. So when you think of these two numbers, it must give you 6, and when you add these two numbers together, you must get 5. What are those two numbers? Those two numbers are 3 and 2. Okay? Hello, pay attention. Those two numbers are 3 and 2. Now, let me just write it somewhere. 3 and 2. 3 and 2. Now, you know that 3 multiplied by 2 equals to 6. Yes? And 3 plus 2 will be equals to what? 5. You can see now. So, when I take the product of these two numbers, I got 6, which is equals to the product of a and c. And when I add these two numbers together, I got 5, which is equals to the second term in this quadratic equation. Do you understand? Okay? Now, the next step is that you have to replace the second term by these two numbers, by the sum of these two numbers. You understand? Listen again. This is what I mean. You have to replace the second term in this quadratic equation by these two numbers. The quadratic equation is what? 2x squared plus 5x plus 3 equals to 0. Now, I'm going to replace the second term. The second term is b, and b is what? 5. So I'm going to replace 5 by 3 and 2. You understand? I'm going to replace this by their sum. So let's proceed. For this, I'm going to have 2x squared plus, so instead of 5, I'm going to have 3 plus 2. You understand? 3 plus 2 into bracket x. You understand? I replace 5 by 3 plus 2. You understand? If you sum 3 and 2 together, you're going to have 5. Okay? So I'm going to have here plus 3. Okay? Plus 3 equals to 0. Do you understand? Okay? Now let us proceed. For this, I'm going to have 2x squared plus, I'm going to open this bracket using this x. 3 multiplied by x, that is what? Plus 3x plus 2x plus 3 equals to 0. Do you understand? Okay? Now, here, I'm going to divide this equation into two. The first part will be this, and the second part will be this. You understand? Okay? You see, just pay attention. You're going to understand, okay? This is very simple. All you have to do is to pay attention. Here, I replace 5 by the two number that I thought. You understand? You take of two number in which their product will be equals to the product of your A and C, and their sum will be equals to the second term, which is B. You understand? So having done that, you replace those two. You replace the second term by those two number by the sum of those two number. So I replace the second term, which is 5, by 3 plus 2. You understand? And 3 plus 2, I enclose this in bracket. So that means that x is multiplying everything in the bracket. 3 times x is what? 3x. 2 times plus 2 times x is what? Plus 2x. So having gotten to this point, I separate this equation into two. You understand? Now, from this point, we are going to factorize. That is why we call this method factorization method. Okay? From this point, you are going to factorize. Hence, I'm going to have what is common to 2x squared and 3x. The common term to 2x squared and 3x is what? X. Okay? Here, I'm going to have x into brackets. Are you paying attention? 2x plus 3. You have to learn how to factorize. When we talk about factorization, when you are factorizing two terms, you are looking for the common term. You understand? So the common term between 2x squared and 3x is what? X. You understand? Now let's try. Let's open this bracket using x. X multiplied by 2x, that will be what? 2x squared. X multiplied by plus 3, that will be what? Plus 3x. Do you understand? Okay? Now let's move to the second bracket. What is common to plus 2x and plus 3? The common term is what? Plus 1. You understand? So I'm going to have here plus 1 into brackets 2x plus 3. This will be equals to 0. Please, let me give you an hint. Anytime you factorize, when you get to this point, you have separated the two brackets. When you factorize, what you have in this bracket must be the same as what you have in this bracket. Do you understand? Okay? Let me take that again. When you get to this point, when you are solving any quadratic equation using the factorization method, what you have in this bracket must be the same as what you have in this bracket. You understand? So if by the time I factorize and I realize that what I have in this bracket is not the same thing as what I have in this bracket, something is wrong. Okay? So let us proceed. Here, I'm going to... This is outside the bracket. X is outside the bracket, and this is also outside the bracket. So I'm going to add them together. I'm going to have x plus 1 equals to 0. Then I'm going to take one of these brackets, 2x plus 3 or 2x plus 3. I'm going to take one. I'm going to set it equals to 0. You understand? Here I'm going to have 2x plus 3 equals to 0 as well. Here, now we can easily determine the value of x. X equals to, if this positive one get to the other side of this equation, is going to change to negative. So I'm going to have negative 1, or x, okay, let's do step by step. 2x equals to, if this positive 3 crosses the equals to sign, it's going to change to what? Negative. So I'm going to have x equals to 2x equals to negative 3. Don't forget, we are asked to determine the value of x. So x equals to negative 1, or divide both sides by 2, or x equals to what? Negative 3 over 2. Do you understand? I'm very sure you can see that we have two values for quadratic equation. You understand? When you are solving, when you are looking for a value in quadratic equation, because the highest power of a quadratic equation, the highest power of the unknown in a quadratic equation is 2. Hence, the solution to that quadratic equation must be 2 solution. You understand? The root of this quadratic equation must be 2. So by the time you substitute the value of x as negative 1 into this quadratic equation, or x as negative 3 over 2 into this quadratic equation, you're going to have 0. You can try that. Okay? So I'm very sure you can now solve you can deal with quadratic equation using factorization method, where a is not unity. Do you understand? In this class, we're going to learn how to solve quadratic equation using the factorization method. Okay, let's start with the first question. We are asked to solve the quadratic equation x squared plus 6x plus 9 equals to 0. Okay? To solve this quadratic equation, you can see that the coefficient of x squared is unity. You understand? That is, a is unity. So we can easily solve this quadratic equation by taking two numbers such that when we take their product, it must be equals to c, which is the constant term in this quadratic equation, and when we add these two numbers together, we must get the second term. You understand? Let me quickly chip this in. The first term is a, you understand? The second term is b, and the third term is c. You understand? So a in this quadratic equation is 1. That means that it is unity. You understand? And b is what? 6. You understand? And c equals to what? 9. So the first step here is that we must find two numbers. Think of two numbers such that when you take the product of these two numbers, you must have c, which is the constant term. The constant term is 9. You understand? So you must have 9. Okay? When you take the product of these two numbers, you must have 9. And when you add these two numbers together, you must add 6. You understand? The two numbers must be summed up to 6, and their product must be what? Must be 9. Okay? What are those two numbers? Those two numbers are what? 3. You understand? 3 and 3. 3 and 3. 3 plus 3 equals to 6. And 3 times 3 equals to 9. You understand? So, as you can see, the sum of these two numbers is equals to 6, and their product is equals to 9. So, the next step here is that I'm going to replace the second term in the quadratic equation by the sum of these two numbers. You understand? The second term in this quadratic equation is b. Oh, sorry. b is equals to 6. Okay? The second term in this quadratic equation is 6. So, I'm going to replace 6 by the sum of these two numbers. Hence, the quadratic equation will become like this. X squared plus, so instead of 6, I'm going to replace this what? 3 plus 3. Okay? So I'm going to have into bracket 3 plus 3 into bracket x plus 9 equals to 0. Do you understand? So here I'm going to proceed as follows. 2x squared plus x multiplied by 3 will give me what? 3x. Plus 3 multiplied by x is what? Plus 3x plus 9 equals to 0. You understand? Now, having gotten to this point, the next step is to factorize. I will separate this quadratic equation into two. You understand? So here I'm going to factorize. Let's start with the first bracket. The first bracket is x squared plus 3x. What is the common factor of x squared plus 3x? The common factor of x squared and 3x is what? X. So I'm going to have x into bracket x plus 3. You understand? Now, what is the common factor of plus 3x and plus 9? The common factor of plus 3x and plus 9 is what? Plus 3. So I'm going to have plus 3 into bracket x plus 9 equals to 0. Okay? So here, you can see the value outside the bracket. I'm going to add those values together. The value outside the bracket here is x, and this is what? Plus 3. Hence, I'm going to have x plus 3 equals to 0. Then, you can see, oh, sorry, I made a mistake here. This should be 3. You understand? This should be 3 because by the time I take the product of plus 3 and x, I will get what? Plus 3x. And by the time I take the product of plus 3 and plus 3, I will get what? Plus 9. You understand? So the right value for this bracket is what? X plus 3. You understand? So how do I know that I made a mistake? I look at the contents in this bracket, the values that I have in this bracket. I see that it is not the same with this. And when you are dealing with quadratic equation of this type, when you get to this stage, when you factorize, the value that you have in the first bracket must be the same as the value that you have in the second bracket. Do you understand? So that is how I realized that I made a mistake. So if by the time you factorize, you realize that this value, the value that you have here is not the same like this, then something might be wrong. Okay? So let us proceed. Now I'm going to take one of these brackets. I'm going to have, since the content, the values are not the same, I'm going to take one of these brackets. X plus 3 equals to 0, that is for this and this. So I'm going to take one of these brackets, either this or this. I'm going to have x plus 3 equals to 0. Here I'm going to have x equals to negative 3 or negative 3. You understand? That is the value of x, okay? Find the value of x in this quadratic equation. 2x squared plus 3x minus 5 equals to 0. Okay? You can see that if you compare the first question that we solved with this second question, you can see that the value of x squared is not the same. In the first question, the value of x is 1, which makes this quadratic equation a quadratic equation where a is unity. You understand? Now, look at this. The value of a in this quadratic equation is what? 2. The value of b is what? Plus 3. The value of c is what? Negative 5. You understand? Now, if you compare this with this, you can see that a is 1, which makes this quadratic equation unity, but here a is 2. So how do we solve this quadratic equation using the factorization method? The first step is that you have to take the product of the first term and the constant term. Listen to the explanation again. Because a is not unity in this quadratic equation, we cannot proceed like we did this. We have to first take some step, and that is the step that I'm telling you. You understand? Now, because a is not unity, that is a is not 1, we have to first take the product of the first term and the constant term. The first term is a and the constant term is c. So here I'm going to have a multiplied by c. A multiplied by c equals to 2 multiplied by negative 5. Here I'm going to have negative 10. You understand? So now, having taken the product of the first term and the constant term, you have to think of two numbers. Hello? Think of two numbers such that when you take their product, you must get the product of the fourth term and the constant term in your quadratic equation. Let me explain again. Now, the first step in solving a quadratic equation where a is not unity is to take the product of a and c. A is the first term and c is the constant term. So I took the product of a and c, I got negative 10. Now, having taken their product, the next step is that you have to think of two numbers such that when you take the product of these two numbers, it must give you negative 10. And when you add these two numbers together, you must get the second term, which is what? Plus 3. Do you understand? The second term in this quadratic equation is this. So, what are those two numbers such that if I take their product, I must get the product of a and c, which is negative 10. And when I add these two numbers together, I must get 3. Okay? Let me give you the time to think. What are those two numbers? Okay? Those two numbers are 5 and negative 2. You understand? Plus 5 and negative 2. Let's check. Please pay attention, okay? Pay attention. Plus 5 multiplied by negative 2 will give us what? Negative 10. You understand? And 5 plus negative 2, that will be what? 5 minus 2, which is equal to what? 3. You understand? So, you can see that the two numbers in which if I take their product, I'm going to get negative 10. And if I sum them together, I'm going to have positive 3 is what? 5 and negative 2. You understand? 5 and negative 2. Okay? So having gotten these two numbers, the next step is that you are going to replace the second term in the quadratic equation by the sum of these two numbers. Just pay attention, okay? You are going to understand. Now, the quadratic equation is what? 2x squared plus 3x minus 5 equals to 0. Now, I'm going to have 2x squared. Now, instead of plus 3, I'm going to replace this second term. The second term is what? Plus 3. Hello, listen. The second term is plus 3. I'm going to replace plus 3 by the sum of the two numbers that I think. You understand? So, the two numbers is what? 5 and negative 2. So, instead of plus 3, I'm going to have into bracket 5 plus minus 2. All into bracket. Let me just put another bracket here. Do you understand? Okay? Minus 5 equals to, oh sorry, there must be x, okay? Because plus 3. Instead of plus 3, I replace plus 3 as what? 5 plus negative 2. If you simplify this, you are still going to have plus 3. You understand? So, and there is an x. So I'm going to have x minus 5 equals to 0. You understand? So you just pay attention. You're going to understand. Here I'm going to have 2x squared plus into bracket. Now I'm going to have 5 plus into bracket minus 2. Negative times positive will give us what? Negative. So I'm going to have 5 minus 2 into bracket x minus 5 equals to 0. You understand? Okay? Here I'm going to have 2x squared plus, now this x will multiply 5 and negative 2. You understand? So 5 multiplied by x is what? 5x. I'm going to have plus 5x. Negative 2 multiplied by x will give me what? Negative 2x. Do you understand? Here I'm going to have negative 2x, negative 5 equals to 0. Okay? Very interesting. Now, how do we solve this question now? We have to separate this equation into two before we factorize. You understand? So let's proceed. Here I'm going to have this and this. You understand? Please take note of the negative sign. Okay. Take note of the negative sign. There is a negative sign at the front of 2. Okay. Now, let us start with the first bracket. What is the common factor of 2x squared and 5x? The common factor is x. You understand? So I'm going to have x into bracket 2x plus 5. You understand? You see, when you are dealing with quadratic equation using factorization method, you have to be well versed with how to factorize. You understand? So if you want to factorize this, what is common to 2x squared and plus 5x? X times 2x, I'm going to have 2x squared. X times positive 5, I'm going to have positive 5x. Now, in the next bracket, what is common to, please pay attention, what is common to negative 2x and negative 5? What is common is negative 1. You understand? So here I'm going to have negative 1 into bracket 2x plus 5 equals to 0. That is the common factor. See, if you open these brackets using this negative 1, you must get this. Should we try it? Negative 1 times negative 2x, that will give us what? Negative 2x. Negative 1 times positive 5, that will give us what? Negative 5. You understand? And another thing to look at is that the content that you have here, the value that you have in this bracket must be the same as the value that you're going to have in this bracket. Are you paying attention? So now we have gotten to this point. The next step here is that I'm going to sum the term that is outside the bracket. I'm going to add them together. Okay? So here I'm going to have x minus 1 equals to 0 and 2x plus 5 equals to 0. You see, this term x plus minus 1 will give us what? X minus 1. You understand? So I took 1 out of this bracket. That is 2x plus 5 because I have the same. Okay? So I set it equals to 0. From this point, we can find the value of x. All you have to do is that for the first equation here, I'm going to have x equals to what? 1. That is the value of x here. And for the second equation, we're going to have 2x equals to what? Negative 5. Divide both by 2. X is equals to what? Negative 5 all over 2. You understand? So the value of x that satisfies the quadratic equation is what? 1 and negative 5 over 2. Now, to check maybe your answers is correct, try substituting the x as 1 in this quadratic equation. You must have 0. If you substitute x as negative 5 over 2 in this quadratic equation, you are still going to get 0. You understand? So in this class, we are going to learn how to solve quadratic equation using the factorization method. Okay, let's start with the first question. We are asked to solve for the value of x in this quadratic equation. X squared plus 7x minus 30 equals to 0. Okay? Now, how do we find the value of x? In this quadratic equation, the value of a is unity. You understand? Don't forget that in our previous class, I told you that the typical representation of the quadratic equation is this: ax squared plus bx plus c equals to 0. You understand? Now, looking at this quadratic equation, a is what? A is 1, which implies that a is unity. So all we have to do is that we have to think of two numbers such that the product of the two numbers will be equals to our constant term in the quadratic equation. You understand? The constant term is c. You understand? The constant term is c, and c in this quadratic equation is what? Negative 30. You understand? This is c and this is b. Okay, so think of two numbers such that when you take the product of these two numbers, you are going to have negative 30. And if you add these two numbers together, you are going to get plus 7, which is b. What are those two numbers? Those two numbers are what? Negative 10 and plus 3. Let us check this out. Negative 10 and plus 3. Now, let us first take the product. The product is what? Negative 10 multiplied by 3. That is what? Negative 30, which is correct. Now, negative 10 plus 3, that will be what? That is, negative 10 plus 3, that is negative 7, which implies that we are not going to use negative 10 and 3. Okay, let's try another number, 3 and negative 10. Okay, 3 and negative 10. Okay, let's take the product of 3 and negative 10. 3 multiplied by negative 10 is what? Negative 30. Okay, 3 plus negative 10, that will be what? 3 minus 10. That will give us negative 7. So this is not correct. This is also not correct. Okay. I know the number, you understand? I just want you to understand. That's why I use this long way. You must think of that number such that when you take their product, it must give us C, which is the constant term in the quadratic equation. And when you add these two numbers together, you must get B. And B is what? 7. When we add these two numbers together, we got negative 7 here. We still got negative 7 here. So we have to try another number. Here, I'm going to change the sign now. Okay, I'm going to change the sign. Here, I'm going to have, let us try negative 3 and 10. You understand? Okay, let's take the product first. 10 multiplied by negative 3. That is what? Negative 30. You understand? Negative 30. And 10 plus negative 3. That is what? Okay, let me just take it step by step. 10 minus 3 equals to what? 7. You understand? So you can see that the two numbers that will give us what we want is what? Negative 3 and 10. You understand? So you must be very, very vast with this. You can see that by the time I take the product of negative 10 and 3, I actually got negative 30. But when I sum it together, it doesn't give me plus 7. Hence, I'm not going to use it. You understand? Those two numbers, their product must give us the constant term, and their sum must give us the second term, which is B. In this case, it is what? Positive 7. So the numbers are what? Negative 3 and 10. Now, having gotten to this point, the next step is that I'm going to replace the second term in this quadratic equation by the sum of these two numbers. Just pay attention, okay? You're going to understand. The quadratic equation is what? X squared plus, now instead of 7, I'm going to replace 7 as what? 10 plus negative 3. You understand? So here, I'm going to have 10 plus negative 3 minus 30. Okay, there is x. Okay, please pay attention. Okay, please. You see, there is x at the back of negative positive 7. So I'm going to have x minus 30 equals to 0. You understand? Okay, here I'm going to have x squared plus into bracket 10 plus times minus, that will be what? Negative 3, x minus 30 equals to 0. You understand? Now I'm going to have x squared plus, now x multiplied by 10 will give us, that will give us 10x. So I'm going to have plus 10x. Okay, negative 3 multiplied by x, that is what? Negative 3x minus 30 equals to 0. You understand? Okay, now I'm going to separate this fraction in this equation into two. The first part will be the first two terms, and the second part, please pay attention, the second part will be the second two parts. Don't forget that there is negative here. Now, before I factorize, I want you to pay attention. If you want to separate the quadratic equation, the first part will be the first two terms, and the second part will be the second two parts. You understand? So the first two parts is x squared and plus 10x. You understand? So here, let us factorize. What is the common factor between x squared and 10x? The common factor is x. So I'm going to have x into bracket x plus 10. You understand? Now, what is the common factor between negative 3x and negative 30? The common factor is negative 3. So I'm going to have negative 3 into bracket x plus 10. This will be equals to 0. If you didn't understand how to factorize, or you are confused in this place, that means you are not part of our first, second, third class. You missed it. So you can watch that class by check the playlist on this channel. You see quadratic equation. You understand? So just try watching all the videos. You understand? You're going to understand how to deal with this step. When we get to this step, we just factorize the common factor in the first bracket. I got this, and the common factor in the second bracket. I got this. You understand? So here, I'm going to add the the common factor together. You understand? The common factor in this bracket is x. The common factor in the second bracket is negative 3. So I'm going to have x plus minus 3. That will be what? X minus 3. So I'm going to set it to 0. X minus 3 equals to 0. And then x plus 10 equals to 0. You understand? Listen to the explanation again. The common factor in the first bracket is x. In the second bracket it is negative 3. So having gotten the common factor, I sum these factors together. X plus minus 3 is what? X minus 3. So I have x minus 3 equals to, I set it equals to 0 as a quadratic, because I'm to determine the value of x. Okay, so x minus 3 equals to 0. Then for the second bracket, for this one, I took one of what I have in this bracket, because the values in this bracket is the same as this, so I took one out of them. Here I have x plus 10 equals to 0. You understand? Okay, here the value of x will be equals to what? X equals to 3, or what? X equals to negative 10. You understand? So though that is the root of the quadratic equation. If you didn't get x equals to 3 or x equals to negative 10, you missed it. And let me quickly chip this in. Anytime you are dealing with quadratic equation that look like this, when you get to this step, make sure that what is here is the same as what is here. The content in your first bracket must be the same as the content in your second bracket. If you factorize and you didn't get the same, that means there is a problem or you made a mistake. You understand? So that is it. Now let's proceed to the second question. Okay, let me erase this now. Okay, for the second question, we are asked to find the value of x in this quadratic equation. 2x squared minus 3x minus 5. 2x squared minus 3x. 2x squared minus 3x minus 5 equals to 0. You understand? Okay. Now, how do we deal with this quadratic equation so that you not be confused? Let me erase this. How do we solve this quadratic equation? You can see that in the second quadratic equation that we are asked to solve, the value of a is not unity. You can see a is not 1. If a is 1, we can easily proceed by, as we did this one. But in this quadratic equation, a is not 1. So how do we go about this? Here, a is 2, b equals to negative 3, and c equals to what? Negative 5. Okay? Now, to solve this quadratic equation, the first step is that you have to take the product of a and c. A is the coefficient of the highest power of the unknown, and in every quadratic equation, the highest power of the unknown is always 2. You understand? So a is the coefficient of x squared, because the unknown in this quadratic equation is what? X. You understand? Okay. Now take the product of the coefficient of x squared and the constant term. The coefficient of x squared is a, which is 2, and the constant term is what? Negative 5. So in this case, a and c, a multiplied by c equals to what? 2 multiplied by negative 5. That is equals to what? Negative 10. Do you understand? Okay. Having taken the product of the first term and the constant term, you have to think of two numbers such that the product of these two numbers must be equals to the product of a and c in your quadratic equation. And by the time you sum these two numbers together, you must get b, which is the second term in the quadratic equation. Let me take that again. Find two numbers, think of two numbers such that when you take their product, you must have negative 10. Because in this quadratic equation, the product of a and c is what? Negative 10. So you have to think of two numbers such that when you take their product, you must have negative 10. And when you take their sum, you must have what? B, which is what? Negative 3. What are those two numbers? Let me give you the time to think. Are you done? Now, write what you think. Write it somewhere, okay? What are the two numbers such that if I take their product, I'm going to have negative 10, and if I add them together, I'm going to have negative 3. Those two numbers are negative 5 and 2. Do you get it right? If you get it right, kudos to you, okay? Those two numbers are negative 5 and 2. You understand? Okay? Let us check. Minus 5 times 2, that is what? Negative 10. Correct. Minus 5 plus 2, that is what? Negative 3. Correct. Hence, the numbers in which their product and the sum is equals to negative 10 and negative 3 respectively is negative 5 and 2 and negative 5 plus 2. Do you understand? Okay. Now, the next step is that we are going to replace the second term in our quadratic equation by the sum of these two numbers. Just pay attention, okay? Here, the quadratic equation will become like this. 2x squared minus 3x minus 5 equals to 0. 2x squared, please pay attention, into bracket, I'm going to replace negative 3 by what? Negative 5 plus 2. You understand? Because negative 5 plus 2 will give me what? Negative 3. Do you understand? Now, I want you to pay attention here. See. Do you know the reason why I put positive in the front of this bracket? The reason is because positive doesn't have effect. You understand? Now I cannot put this negative in the front. You understand? If I put it, it will have effect. That means that every content that will be in this bracket is multiplying the negative. So we won't get the same answer. Do you understand? So just open the bracket. Instead of negative 3 now, I'm going to replace negative 3 as what? Negative 5 and plus 2. You understand? So I'm going to have negative 5 plus 2 into bracket x. Do you understand? That's it. Okay? Minus 5 equals to 0. So here I'm going to have 2x squared. Negative 5 times x, that is what? Negative 5x. Plus 2 times x, that is what? Plus 2x. Minus 5 equals to 0. Okay? Now, I'm going to separate this quadratic equation into two. Okay? The first part will be the first two parts. The first part will be this, and the second part will be this. Okay? Now, let us deal with this using the factorization method. The reason why we call this method the factorization method is because here we are going to factorize. So, if you are not versed with factorization, make sure you learn more on it. Now, what is the common factor between 2x squared minus 5x? The common factor is x. You understand? So I'm going to have x into bracket 2x minus 5. Do you understand? Okay. Now, what is the common factor between plus 2x and negative 5? The common factor is 1. You understand? So I'm going to have plus 1 into bracket 2x minus 5. Okay. Equals to 0. Now, the next step is that I'm going to take the term outside the bracket and sum them together, this and this. Okay? So I'm going to have x plus 1 equals to 0. Do you understand? Now, I'm going to take one of these brackets and set it equals to 0 because I have the same contents now. Okay? So I'm going to have 2x minus 5 equals to 0. So here I'm going to have x equals to negative 1, and here I'm going to have 2x equals to 5, and x will be equals to what? X is equals to 2 over 5. X equals to, okay, 5 over 2, sorry, okay, 5 all over 2. You can see how simplified this, the question is. So that is how to solve quadratic equation using the factorization method. However, there are some quadratic equations that cannot be solved using the factorization method. You understand? Those ones we are going to solve using the completing the square, the formula method, or even the graphical method. Okay, so we are still coming there. Maybe we are going to do that in our next class. In this class, we're going to focus on how to solve quadratic equation using the factorization method. Okay, let's start with the first question. We are asked to find the value of x in this quadratic equation: 12x squared minus 5x minus 2. 12x squared minus 5x minus 2 equals to 0. Okay, now how do we solve for the value of x in this quadratic equation? You can see that in this quadratic equation, the a is not unity. You understand? That is, the coefficient of x squared is not 1. So how do we go about this? The first step is that we have to take the product of a and c. You understand? In this quadratic equation, a is equals to 12, b equals to negative 5, and c equals to negative 2. You understand? All this we've discussed in our previous class. You understand? So now we first have to take the product of a and c. So a multiplied by c equals to 12 multiplied by negative 2, which is negative 24. You understand? Okay, now having taken the product of a and c, we have to determine two numbers. You understand? We have to think of two numbers such that the product of these two numbers must be equals to negative 24, and the sum of these two numbers must be equals to negative 5. Okay, negative 5 is b, and negative 24 is the product of a and c. You understand? So what are those two numbers that if I take their products, that is, if I multiply these two numbers together, I will have negative 24, and if I sum these two numbers together, I'm going to have negative 5. I want you to take for some moments. These two numbers is negative 8 and 3. You understand? Negative 8 and 3. Now, take for instance, negative 8 and 3. Let us try this. Negative 8 multiply by 3, that will give us what? Negative 24. Correct. Negative 8 plus 3, that will give us what? Negative 5. Correct. You can see now. So the two numbers that we need is negative 8 and plus 3. You understand? Now, having known these two numbers, the next step is that we are going to replace the two. We are going to replace b. B is negative 5. We are going to replace b, which is negative 5, by the sum of these two numbers. You understand? Because by the time we sum these two numbers, we got b, which is negative 5. So instead of writing b in our quadratic equation now, we are going to replace these two numbers by negative 8 and 3. You understand? We are going to replace negative 5 as negative 8 and 3. Do you understand? So our quadratic equation now becomes 12x squared. Now, instead of minus 5, we are going to replace it with negative 8 plus 3. So I'm going to have into bracket negative 8 plus 3 into bracket x. Do you understand? Okay, minus 2 equals to 0. Now, here I'm going to open the bracket using the x. I'm going to have 12x squared minus 8x plus 3x minus 2 equals to 0. Do you understand? Okay, so here I'm going to separate this quadratic equation into two parts. The first part will be the first two parts. The first two parts is 12x squared and negative 8x. And the second part is plus 3x and negative 2. So now I'm going to factorize each part. You understand? Now, what is the factor of 12x squared? Common factor now. Are you paying attention? The common factor of 12x squared and negative 8x. What is the common factor? The common factor here is 4x. You understand? Hello, listen. The common factor of 12x squared and negative 8x is what? 4x. So I'm going to have 4x into brackets. Now, that will be, I'm going to have 3x minus 2. And the reason is because anytime, if I take the common factor of 12x squared and negative 3x as 4x, if I multiply this bracket, I must result into 12x squared and negative 8x. You understand? 4x times 3x, 12x squared. 4x times negative 2, that is negative 8x. You can see now. Okay, now let's proceed to the second part of this bracket. We have plus 3x and negative 2. What is the common factor of plus 3x and negative 2? The common factor there is plus 1. You understand? So here I'm going to have plus 1 into bracket 3x minus 2. This one is simple because if I take the product of 1 and 3x minus 2, I'm still going to have this. Do you see now? So here I'm going to have equals to 0. Do you understand? If you didn't understand, reverse the video and listen to the explanation again. Okay? Now, having gotten here, we are going to sum the common factor together. The common factor of this bracket is 4x, and the common factor of this bracket is plus 1. So I'm going to have 4x plus 1 equals to 0. You understand? Now, you can see that the value that we have in this bracket is the same as the value that we have in this bracket. So I'm going to have 1, I'm going to take 1, which is 3x minus 2 equals to 0. Now, we have gotten a. What will be the value of x? 4x equals to negative 1, because if this plus 1 crosses the equals to sign to the other side of the equation, the sign is going to change to negative. Do you understand? So for this, I'm going to have 4x equals to negative 1. Divide both sides by 4. Here I'm going to have x equals to negative 1 over 4. Okay? For the second part, we have 3x minus 2 equals to 0. Okay? For this, I'm going to have 3x equals to, if this negative 2 crosses the equals to sign to the right hand side of the equation, I'm going to have plus 2. So there's no need of putting plus, equals to 2. Divide both sides by 3. This over 3. X equals to 2 all over 3. You can see now, so the root of this quadratic equation, 12x squared minus 5x minus 2 equals to 0, is negative 1 over 4 and 2 over 3 respectively. Do you understand? So that is the first question. Let us deal with another question. We have to find the value of x in the quadratic equation 3x squared plus 14x plus 8. 3x squared plus 14x plus 8 equals to 0. Okay? Now you can see that in this quadratic equation as well, the coefficient of x squared is not unity, that is, it is not 1. Hence, I'm going to take the product of the first term and the constant term in this quadratic equation. So I'm going to have a multiplied by c equals to 3 multiplied by 8. 8 times 3 is equals to 24. You understand? Okay? So having taken the product of a and c, we need a number such that if we multiply these two, we need two numbers. Think of two numbers such that if we take the product of these two numbers, we are going to have 24. And if we add these two numbers together, we are going to have 14. What are those two numbers? Think for a moment, you understand? I'm giving you some seconds to think. Okay, if you get it right, the two numbers are 12 and 2, you understand? 12 and 2. Let's try it. 12 and 2. 12 and 2. 12 multiplied by 2 equals to 24, you understand? And 12 plus 2 equals to what? 14, you understand? So that means that the two numbers that we need is 12 and 2, you understand? So for this, I'm going to have 3x squared. So I'm going to replace the second term, which is 14. The second term is 14, okay? I'm going to replace the second term by 12 plus 2, you understand? Like we did for the previous example, okay? So I'm going to have 3x squared into bracket plus 12 plus 2 into bracket x plus 8 equals to 0, you understand? Okay, I'm going to have 3x squared plus 12x plus 2x plus 8 equals to 0, okay? Now, I'm going to separate this quadratic equation into two, okay, so that I can factorize it. Okay, now what is the common factor of 3x squared and plus 12x? The common factor is 3x, okay? So I'm going to have 3x into bracket x plus 4, okay? Now, for the second part, what is the common factor between 2x and 8? The common factor is plus 2, you understand? So I'm going to have plus 2 into bracket x plus 4. This will be equals to 0, you understand? Okay, now having gotten the common factor, I'm going to sum the common factor and set it equals to 0. The common factor of the first bracket is 3x, and that of the second bracket is what? Plus 2. So I'm going to have 3x plus 2 equals to 0, okay? And I'm going to take one of these brackets. Now, let me give you an hint. Anytime you get to this point and you factorize this quadratic equation, when you factorize it, what you have in this bracket must be the same with what you are going to have in this bracket. So if by the time you factorize yours, maybe you are doing exam, know that this must be equal to this. If you didn't have the same answer, that means something is wrong. You have to cross-check, you understand? Okay, so I'm going to take one of these brackets. Here, I'm going to have x plus 4 also equals to 0. Now, here I'm going to have 3x equals to negative 2, because if this positive 2 crosses the equals to sign, the sign is going to change to negative 2. So divide both by 3, divide over by 3. X equals to negative 2 over 3. Now, for this, I'm going to have x equals to, if this positive 4 crosses the equals to sign to the other side of the equation, it's going to change to negative 4. So x is equals to negative 2 or negative 3. Negative 2 over 3 or negative 4. Those are the values that that satisfy the quadratic equation 3x squared plus 14x plus 8. Do you understand? Okay? If you have any question regarding this, let me know in the comment section. And for the next class, we are going to deal with how to solve quadratic equation using the completing the square method. I'm very sure you won't want to miss the class, so please subscribe, hit the subscribe button, click the like button, and if you have any question regarding this, let me know in the comment section. Okay, see you in the next class.